Very good. So this next panel is going to be focused on the intersection of investments and outcomes for a just transition. We did make a quick moderator switch, so Svenja has been kind enough to jump over from the last panel and also bring her wealth of knowledge and experience from the finance and investment background to this panel, thinking about how these investments come out in the digital form, and that catalytic finance can lead to better outcomes, whether it's across SDGs, a just transition, but thinking about digital tools in a unique way. So Svenja, over to you.
Yeah, it's been a while. So it was a last-minute change because of some health issues. So bear with me. I'm going to walk us through this panel. Welcome to those that haven't attended the last panel. Really nice to have you here this evening at the Hedera Generative Finance Forum. And welcome to the panelists, which I'm briefly going to introduce. We have Osman Fall-Star, coordinator for the West African Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance. Rather than me introducing you, I'm going to give all of you a minute to introduce yourself, because I didn't have the time to prepare. We have Alessi Chardin, CEO and co-founder of EverCity, and Raphael Deride, CEO of Alcott.io. So how about we just go through the bench, a short introduction, and maybe also very briefly, what is your objective that you held coming to this COP? Because at the end of the day, it's hopefully a milestone event when it comes to Article 6.
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me this beautiful sunny day in the beautiful sunny Baku. My name is Alexis Chadrin, I'm CEO and co-founder of EverCity. We are a digital climate finance infrastructure provider that is aimed at accelerating climate financing in developing countries by providing digital tools that can help automate the origination process. And we have 3 verticals: carbon, green debt, and climate fund management. And what brings me to COP and what is one of my main goals here is the Digital Innovation Pavilion that we're co-hosting, also with support of Hedera and HBAR Foundation in the Blue Zone at COP. And there we invite all the climate innovators and also broader sustainability innovators that use digital tools to help us attain the sustainable development goals. And you're all cordially invited to join our sessions. Tomorrow we have a finance day. And so this is a place where we want to highlight all the innovations that has been done during the year and give the floor and connect innovators with the UN crowd, decision makers from various countries around the globe. Thanks.
For logistics, it's in the Blue Zone? For logistics, it's in the Blue Zone?
Yes, in the Blue Zone, H9. You're invited. The website is dip.earth. And you can find the program there or live streams. If you cannot make it to the Blue Zone, then the live streams, recordings will be there as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's move over to the next panelist, Usman.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Usman Fall-Sar, and I'm from Senegal, where I used to be Director of Planning at the Senegalese Rural Electrification Agency for more than 20 years. And I used to be also the chair of the Senegalese National Climate Change Committee and involved in the negotiations on Article 6 since 2008. As a Senegalese delegate on carbon markets and climate finance. We recently initiated the creation of the West African Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance in 2022, just to assist our member countries in West Africa to get ready for Article 6, because we did realize that we did not get advantage of the CDM. And because of many reasons, that's why we tried to anticipate everything, to build our capacity, to be more involved in the negotiation process, and to be where the rules, modalities, procedures are decided, so that we will have full capacity to make it operational for our countries. So the alliance is an alliance of 16 countries in West Africa, and so far we are managing to help them to build their regulatory framework to facilitate the engagement of private sector, all key implementing actors operational on the ground. Thank you.
What's your objective this year at COP? In one word.
One word is decision on Article 6.
I let it count. Raphael, over to you.
Thank you, Svenja. My name is Raphael Dery. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Olcott.io, which is the digital arm of a carbon project developer, Olcott, that was established in 2009. Our aim is to create like a carbon origination platform that can help to capture all the data that is necessary to register the project and keep the traceability of the claims that are substantiated by the issuance of the carbon credits. We are the grantee of the HBAR Foundation, on which we build on the Guardian ecosystem to mechanize and like automate like the different like stakeholders' duties to make it accessible to all and be interoperable. And we have the opportunity to create a layer of standardization that is like the main objective of my venue at COP, where is to unite like all the different like pieces of the puzzle to be aligned together to communicate this clearly, to perform the different steps necessary in order to like get this project to start and then to operate in a transparent manner.
What's your objective?
My objective is to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Wonderful. So this panel is titled Open Climate Finance Enabling Outcome for the Just Transition. By the way, my objective is operationability of Article 6 after a long time. And a little bit of my background. So prior to Denominator, I led origination for a climate finance fund out of Canada, directly into carbon projects. So a lot of the pain points we're going to discuss today on the panel I've experienced in great detail. And coming to the first sort of question, what are the most significant barriers to scaling climate finance that benefit communities directly, especially in the Global South? And I think there are a few cornerstones here. One of the big problems to look at project investment, and before going over to the panelists, one of the biggest problems that I have with financing projects directly is that investors have a really hard time to assess the risk, while carbon removal projects that are in higher demand thanks to SBTi and other corporate suggestive mechanisms require really high capex. So for reduction projects, we required an ongoing OPEX, while now the entire financial system is changing to like, we need a lot of money up front, and no one wants to carry the risk for that CapEx. And what I find tricky is that a lot of corporates are really playing with the language. They say, okay, we put out forward purchase agreements for all these credits. It's like, but do you put the money on the table? No. And that, in my opinion, is a really, really huge bottleneck for finance, that language is being misused, and that the project developer is expected to go out and raise what? Debt. How are you supposed to raise debt in such a volatile market at feasible capital costs? So the money actually ends up where it's supposed to be in the Global South. So that is one opening remark where I was in the seat to actually deploy capital. We made not forward purchase agreements, we made forward purchases. And in order to do that, you need to understand the risk of the asset. And coming over to you three, I think in different ways you're all helping through digital infrastructure to understand asset risk in the carbon space for investors and the broader market space. So I would love to start with you, Raphael. Can you maybe dive a little bit into how can project developers better align with sustainable development goals to showcase both climate and social outcomes for investors, which is, high quality offsets, right? No one wants to touch anything else. So in your world, how do you make sure that the investor understands that what they're investing into is thumbs up?
Yeah, we get this big effort that is coming from the pitch deck to the due diligence, which is normally where you get to sell a dream, and then you get the friction point about like substantiating this dream. And when you speak about all using the same language, I think this is the biggest challenge that we face. We don't have a standardization of data, and from the previous panel, from the Vera CEO, hearing that they are engaging actively between the different bodies, the standards, the VVBs, to make sure that they use the same denomination of the different factors of a project is really a key that can help to open the door to better discovery of like what's really happening on the ground. And in this direction, from a project developer point of view, we believe that it's unreasonable somehow to discard like everything that constitutes a project when we issue a project design document that is supposed to resume it. All this effort of collecting like a very granular piece of information is what is asked to substantiate at the end on the demand side from the buyers who are asking for like high transparency and integrity credits. So there is this layer of trust that we need to be able to deliver, and this is where we leverage like the capability of DLT technologies and organization that can help to streamline this information in the right way, so that from the demand side and their requirements, we are able to channel this data that exists, but is often like allocated in different places that are difficult to extract in a machine-readable format, to make it happen, so that like at our space where we're already interacting with many different stakeholders, starting with the community, and then the verifiers, and then the standards, we already need to be able to have like a common layer to make sure that after that, when we channel like initiatives such as Carbon Forward, and we collaborate on that actively with like EverCity, we have not like a repeat of the same like work operation, but like a streamlining of the data that can be much more efficient than what is happening at the moment, which is like siloed into documents that cannot communicate to each other. And as much as we want to like leverage AI and things like this, at this stage we still need to be able to like build this infrastructure so that like we can channel it. Vera CEO was mentioning about connecting the dots, and there is like many different ways to connect the dots, and there's maybe some different incentives around this, but like we need to make sure that like the two dots are able at least to speak to each other first.
Yeah, really, really great points. And maybe to dig a little bit deeper, we have so many digital opportunities now, but what I said earlier about CAD Trust, the user forum is one of the ways to make sure that data is actually usable, that its use cases are operationalized end. So in terms of attesting attributions to projects on some sort of digital ledger, I know you're building something called Cui Bono, and I think you're touching on something that is really getting more attention in the corporate world, is to really understand who at the end of the day benefits from the project, also sort of blending into CCPs and ESG frameworks, co-benefits, how this being measured. Can you dive a little bit into that part?
So, cui bono means in Latin to whom it benefits. And if we have to resume, this is really what we all need to know. When there is an activity that is performed on a project, there is many different actions that take place and that are recorded in different forms. But like we need to be able to express this into some metrics that can be after that valued by different entities. And the effort behind that is also leveraging, again, digital technologies where ultimately we would be able to like trace financial disbursement and like how this actually like financing has like a correlation to an SDG impact. It seems very easy from the outside to say that like, oh, we give back like X% of the carbon revenues to a project, but we don't have like the capacity at the moment to prove that from an external or public access layer. So it's an effort on which like we still need to like connect these dots to make it like fully discoverable, but like helping with all the stakeholders to trace a way that, like, for instance, if we have like salaries that are dispersed to a school that is part of like a beneficiation program of a project, is helping to showcase that the salaries has been dispersed and like a certain amount of like teaching has been delivered, we have somehow an SDG impact that is clearly visible. And there is like this demand side that is like very much like in like full agreement with that. It's just like we don't have like yet the layers to do that. We have the vision to do it, and it's progressively like through also coordination and regulation that we can get to this objective.
Yeah, I think it's also a huge misconception for corporates that so often what is perceived as co-benefit is actually an essential for the project to operate. For example, water infrastructure in rural India. Without the water infrastructure, you won't have any sort of agricultural activity on arid land. So I think there's a lot of potential to measure, to showcase, and also to educate that not everything is a co-benefit, but also an essential that is embedded in the project and needs to be financed for a project to operate. So coming to you, Osman, and moving all the way up to the country level, what are the key challenges that West African countries face in accessing climate finance, and how do regional and international policies impact these challenges? I mean, having been sitting in the seat of the investor in projects in some African communities in Rwanda and other countries, more in the southern part of Africa, of course we have a new kid around the block, Article 6.4 risk, right? Corresponding adjustment risk, and. So what have you perceived historically? What have been financial barriers for project finance investments, and more recently as asset valuation has dramatically changed with Article 6 and corresponding adjustments?
Thank you. I think this is a very important and broad question. You raised the issue of accessing to upfront financing. It is something that is really challenging in our countries when it comes to develop and implement carbon market projects, because in most of the time in our countries, interest rates are very high, and the banking system is really reluctant to invest in this kind of projects because of risks and many guarantees that they are asking. And most of the time, the project proponent don't have this type of guarantee that they are asking. And there is also a big gap in terms of capacity. They don't know really what carbon finance or carbon market is about. So there is a huge task in terms of capacity building, awareness raising among the banking system and the private sector in general. And in that, because if you talk about specific climate finance, dealing with institutions like GCF, for example, most of the project proponents or the main actors on the ground, they don't know how to establish the climate change rationale of their project before starting developing the project. The complexity of the methodologies that they have to use, they need to have expertise on that. In addition to that, we have a complex process in our countries involving many stakeholders. You have the DNA, you have the line ministries, you have all the key stakeholders that have to, at a certain point, come in or validate your projects. But you need to interact. So at the end of the day, it will be very difficult for a project proponent to go through all these steps. And transaction costs can be very high in our countries if we don't have any facilitation. In addition to that, we have most of the time the language barriers, because all documents, PDDs, funding proposals, they are in English. And in most of, for example, if I take my case in West Africa, we are 16 member countries in the alliance, and 8 countries are French-speaking countries. They always claim that they cannot move forward with a template in English, so they need to translate first before being able to develop their project. So this is really a barrier that we need to address. And in addition to that, we have also the complexity of the methodologies. And the UNFCCC started something really important in terms of digitization of methodologies, but so far we haven't seen a very significant progress in that area. This could have been a real solution for us to facilitate the preparation and the development of a PDD from a West African or an African project developer perspective. So at the end of the day, we need more tools, digital tools to facilitate the project development, to reduce the transaction costs, and to make project preparation easy for project proponent. And this is an issue of capacity. And after developing, registering the project, comes the challenge of the MRV. Do we have the proper MRV system to track everything and to report normally? So these are some key challenges that we are facing now, and we are trying to address through capacity building, through project origination facilities, and also through instruments or tools development, digital solutions.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about how digital tools can really catalyze not just on the project level, but also on the national level, where suddenly you come into capacity building, into addressing language barriers, into reducing the upfront costs of projects, multiplied by a number of like dozens, hundreds, hopefully. In terms of MRV, we have heard quite some stories that we've probably all read over the last couple of months coming out of some of the projects. Where do you see a huge opportunity for countries to improve and to maintain and really own the reputation that you can hold for yourself when it comes to project issuance? What Max said on the previous panel, we as Madagascar don't want to have poor quality credits issued, and thinking about the pitfall of MRV that has happened in the past, and it has a negative backlash on countries. So it's suddenly the reputation is out of the window, even though the project developer wasn't even from the country itself. So where do you see on the country level in West Africa to really, really tap into MRV, not just for capacity digital MRV, not just for capacity building and issuance, but also for reputational protection?
Exactly, that's where I can echo what Raphael has already said with the ongoing project that they are developing, the Cui Bono, because we have noticed recently that most of our partners, the buyers, they are talking about more environmental integrity for projects, good quality of project. What good quality means for us, several issues to take into consideration when it comes to develop a carbon market or climate finance project in Africa. Stakeholder engagement, local community engagement, fair benefit sharing mechanism, and also environmental and social safeguard, gender inclusion. All these issues need to be mainstream in the project development and also monitored in the implementation. And most of the time, we lack tools that can help us facilitate this. And that's where we think that we have now some very promising digital solution that we can use to facilitate this task for our project development in our states.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. Leslie, over to you. Can you give us a little bit of a deep dive into how EverCity's platform addresses the unique financing needs of the Global South and facilitates transparency in carbon markets? Sounds like a solution that can solve a lot of problems.
Thanks for the question. So in EverCity, we have a vision that any project proponent or project owner doesn't really have to have this climate financing knowledge or understand different carbon markets and standards and and everything. So in every city, we're trying to create like a one-window solution for any project proponent, any business that is doing climate mitigation projects, maybe adaptation as well, any person or group or community that can come to our platform and just describe in a basic way the project, and then the system guides them through this complicated process with ease, with gamification, step by step, helping to go through all of the stages of the climate financing process, starting with a project idea node that later on can be shared with LCOT or maybe other project developers. And so project developers and proponents start working together, but then digital tools help them create a project design document also, automatically or semi-automatically, facilitate certain calculations, create like a very good high-quality draft of a PDD, and then they, together they finalize it, so they both parties don't spend too much time on creating this document and again and again, or trying to learn about carbon markets and how to craft a PDD themselves, and this, and then going further and further into the pre-financing, which could be carbon forwards, or could be some other instruments, maybe debt instruments, maybe something else. Let's see. We're here also in the exploration phase, like you said. More vehicles are needed, more types of investors are needed. Maybe crypto investors can come at a certain point, or some other investors. We'll see, and we're looking at this carefully, and then going further and further through the funnel, all the way to collaboration with carbon standards, and some of them were here, and we're seeing also the interest of carbon standards, carbon registries to go digital, to integrate with existing solutions or create their own solutions, and that's already a massive trend. That's the reality. And then, of course, the MRV and everything. So our vision is that the system should do most of the work, and everyone should do whatever they can do best. If the farmer, let them do, farming and transition to sustainable practices. And if it's a project developer, then let them help more farmers or other projects by, making their life easier. But of course, this is one part, the interfaces, the document automation. This is great, but we also need trust. As you said, investors want to go deeper into due diligence. If they are providing upfront financing, they want to learn more about the project, and now investors are becoming so sophisticated. They want to know so many things, but they also want to know them in a learn them in a structured way, to lose a lot of time on the due diligence and so on and so on. So the data has to be structured and put onto something that could bring trust and transparency. And this is exactly what HBAR Foundation is doing here. It's providing the trust and transparency layer and framework, which is called the Guardian, where any action of the stakeholders that I mentioned can be traced to the very root, to the the first data point that was put into the system, and all the way throughout the value chain, which should bring the trust of the investors. But also HBAR Foundation and Guardian connects the carbon dimension to the global decentralized financial system, so to say, which is becoming more and more important, more and more adopted and widespread and regulated, and the convergence of these two spaces is there, and it's really powerful. And Hedera and HBAR Foundation, they're leading on that, as well as in digitizing the methodologies in an open source way, and just putting these methodologies to an open source database where literally anyone could use them, and not to reinvent the wheel all the time. Because just imagine if everyone starts digitizing methodologies, there would could be different ways of, doing this, and then many systems, and we end up again in a messed up situation where, there are so many things and we don't know which one is right.
Let me also dive in there what you mentioned with the investors and basically tapping into other sort of investor pools potentially. I think if we follow the thought that digital tools can make projects not just more transparent but also more granular, can create more granular project information. And coming back to high quality, what we talked about, co-benefits and thinking about the co-benefits that are created through a project and by a project as something that can transparently be measured, quantified, and with that granular, immutable information, we also have the opportunity to approach a different set of investors, such as impact investors, ESG investors, that would traditionally not invest in the carbon project, but because now we have project attributes that we can pull apart, it's also very interesting from a structured finance perspective, right? We have the traditional carbon investors, but we also have these investors that want to invest into gender equality or water infrastructure. So how do you think innovation in digital technologies can make sure that the sort of SDG, ESG attributes in the project can be traced? And then also translated into the investment perspective, because again, we want to address financial barriers, right?
Yeah, exactly. A great question. So we're talking about the co-benefits. These are becoming essentially more and more important, and this is what should be done. I think what Raphael and Elcat.io is doing there is really great, because tracing where the money goes and who's getting the money, whether communities are getting them. This is super important. But talking about the broader SDG dimension, of course, with all the monitoring tools, various things and aspects can be monitored in an automated way, and this might even create jobs. So there's like like an expanding economies of scale here. And I think that's definitely one topic. And going back to the investors, I think digital technologies actually open up this space to new investor types in two ways. So first, it's now available, it's like now possible to bundle the credits, the projects, experiment with structured finance, with different, bonds or loans that are somehow connected with the carbon benefits of the projects, or maybe even biodiversity benefits, right? We're seeing this as well. But from the other side, this actually opens up the space for retail investors, for example. And if, there is a trust chain, then any person can see the whole thing, can see where the money goes, and can become an investor into a carbon project. Because before that, whatever was offered to just people was that carbon offsetting. But it's great, and many people really offset their footprints. But this is some sort of like a voluntary commitment of a person, sort of charity, right? Which is great. But now, thanks to this, digital tools, these people can also become proactive investors into the projects, and they can get credits that later on can be sold on exchanges or put into liquidity pools, which are Web3 mechanisms that provides certain yield on assets. But also, they can later on offset their footprints, but this can have much more impact and provide the upfront financing for the projects.
Yeah, one more comment from my side before I open up for questions from the audience. Coming back to the last panel, which was all about trust, financeability of projects, and addressing financial bottlenecks in the capex-heavy model of carbon removal projects. I think something that we didn't really talk about, which I think is also a huge opportunity for digital innovation, is insurability of projects. The moment we build trust and create more granular data on the project level, the insurance sector is more likely to insure projects at a lower insurance premium. And for a lot of investors, it makes the investment much cheaper. So I think that's also maybe for our next panel, something interesting to think about how we can tie that perspective in as well. So over to the audience for hopefully some engaging questions.
So we have one question, actually coming online question, about the concepts that Alexi started to dive into on what they call real-world assets, and investing into projects from the retail investor. And I think this maybe is to the whole panel. Could you, and maybe we'll start with Usman, if that's okay. Could you speak to this total size of the finance needed, say in a region that's covered by the West African Alliance? What is the size of the finance needed? And maybe if you could give a couple examples of the types of projects and what finance is needed on a project level. And I think the question is really getting at how would that look like from an asset perspective? Is it bonds? Is it forwards? And I think they're trying to figure out how that plays out on chain.
It's a very tough question because it depends on the project types. We have sometimes projects requesting investment around $5 million, some 10 millions, some 20. It depends on the different categories. For example, if you take the some renewable projects, the minimum size is something like 5 million, 10 million. So it is something that is really, really important for project developers. And in terms of technology-based projects, they are ranging from 10 to 20 in most cases. But we still have also opportunity for small projects that are promoted by small, medium enterprises. I think we have to give an opportunity for this type of project, the small projects, for less than 5 million USD, because we can have an aggregate of many small projects in the country. That is the most frequent situation in our countries. And if we want to boost the small and medium enterprises, I think this is a segment where we need to have investment. But this is also the most risky projects because they lack guarantees, they lack all the basic requirements that the traditional banking system is asking for project development. So in terms of instruments, I think debt is something that is more accessible. There is few institutions interested in equity, and so far that's what we have. You see that there is a big gap to fill.
I just want to make a point on the regard of like the demand side and the investing. We've been speaking to some bankers who basically say like, your 2 million project over there, you know, it's like, it's not a big enough number. It's like, you got to pump up the numbers to make it like attractive for me to like deliver the work. And what we've seen like, especially somehow on the bond market, is like innovative way of like structuring them using digital ledger technology, where it makes it like much easier for them to proceed with like the whole life cycle of the bond, and some innovation also in terms of like how carbon is a part of the investment, is basically covering the coupon, like reducing drastically the risk of like the total assets allocated. And this direction is really proving to be a great gateway to mitigate the risk that at the inception point is such a difficult lever to unlock to make this capital flow into the projects. And I think there is like a convergence in this effort about like trying to find a way to allocate capital that has been already like deployed and is sitting in many different like establishments, but at the same time like make sure that like capital is not like exposed to like a risk factor that is too elevated. And to get back to like some of like the most of the content of the panels, there is always this capacity building and like understanding like each other's like technology that is needed, and is only leading by example and like getting other financial institutions to be like more versed into like this kind of systems that we can help to deploy the capital where it's needed, such as like the projects that Usman mentioned that are like sometimes small scale, but have like big impact both on the environmental and the social side, so that they could be under an umbrella, allowing actually like a default risk that can be somehow factored in. And I don't know, Usman, but like today, if you had like, I think the question was more like if you had like a magic wand and like a blank check, that's where like we would have something that can also be like a little bit more attractive for the financial sector, saying, okay, we're going to allocate like X hundred millions, and there's going to be like a massive impact that can also repercute towards the whole economy. It's the same thing when we speak with governments. At the end of the day, yes, they're interested in carbon revenues, but the thing that comes up the most is jobs. How many jobs are you going to create? How much like development to my local industry are you going to help me to structure? And this is where like it's at the end like the exercise of basically issuing carbon credits is reducing all the other like not co-benefits, they are pure benefits that this financial mechanism can offer.
Yeah, really good point. And 2 comments on this. I think digitization and the granularity of data can also move the carbon market away from the perception that it's every single carbon credit is a commodity and that fungibility is embedded in this market. We have very diverse projects. They're not all the same. They all have different price points and durabilities and from a bond structure that can be honored. It's not trying to be erased because we have the data, we can bring it together and honor that the projects in the bundle are different, and yet bring it to the market as one big tool into which larger funds can actually invest. And let's see if there's another question. And we explained it all. That's great. Great, only took 25 years, right, Osman? Yeah. So I think without any further ado, Wes, we are on time. We have a 10-minute break to take a breather, maybe grab a drink, talk to your neighbor, and I hope you enjoy the rest of COP, and thank you for being here today.